Homage Shakyamuni Buddha, Manjushri, symbol of wisdom. Homage to the lineage masters. The subtle Dharma, rare in 100,000 eons. Now I can see, may I know Tathagata's meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings, please arouse the unsurpassed and supreme bodhicitta. Now let us continue our study together, just for a little while longer, if you don't mind. The guidance on the preliminary practices of the great perfection, composed by the omniscient Patrul Rinpoche. Previously, we have already discussed the 18 types of leisures and endowments. At the same time, we also talked during our session about what the Venerable Longchenpa explained in the Wish-Fulfilling Treasury, namely the avoidance of the 16 types of non-leisure, meaning those specific situations or conditions that limit one's ability to engage in spiritual practice. In this round of teaching on the guidance on the preliminary practices, we are covering the material in an extensive manner. One could say, in terms of time, I feel that we are going into great detail. In terms of content, I am also making every possible effort to thoughtfully add some of my own understanding and insights to the content from my own personal perspective, including some instructions that are beneficial and helpful for my own practice. Therefore, I would like to address each and every one of you who are present here today, acknowledging your presence and participation. You must place the preliminary practices in an important position and study them. Even more importantly, you must actually put these important ideas into real practice, truly making them a part of your life. This year, we are required to study the preliminary practices, especially the common preliminary practices. You must gradually and steadily develop some truly firm understanding. In the past, whether in Tibetan regions or in Han Chinese areas, although some people studied and taught the preliminary practices, it was actually quite uncommon and difficult to come across any form of guidance that genuinely provided people with clear direction and support, especially when it came to applying that advice in real-life situations and actual practice. So after thoughtfully and carefully considering it for a very long time indeed, I decided to dedicate some more time and require that everyone present here, whether monastic or layperson, must actively engage in actual hands-on practice in order to truly learn. If we only talk about it verbally, meaning we just discuss the topic using words and have conversations about it without doing anything more or taking any practical steps, but do not truly integrate each and every sentence into our own mind streams, then indeed it is extremely, extremely difficult to subdue our afflictions. Therefore, I want to take this opportunity to very sincerely, truly, and earnestly remind all of you every once again that those Dharma friends who indeed have the opportunity and the time should make sure to practice well, especially through retreat. In particular, the preliminary practices of recognizing the rarity and impermanence of human life, the faults of samsara, and the infallibility of Karmathi's 4 preliminaries must be established as an extremely solid, very reliable and dependable foundation. This foundation mostly depends on one's own efforts. It's not necessarily about us imposing some kind of system to restrain you or using some forceful means to make you practice. Doing it that way might possibly have some effect, at least to some extent, I suppose, but the most important thing, above all else, is that everyone must consistently practice, always with a strong sense of self-awareness. Because if we haven't established a solid foundation in the preliminaries, then no matter what practice we do on the surface, we might see some temporary signs or minor achievements. But over the long term, in general, as time goes on, typically speaking, or when it comes to truly significant matters in this life or the next, if your mind stream is not in harmony with the 4 preliminaries, it's actually very difficult indeed to truly benefit from it, as you might expect. On this point, after all, we've studied for such a long time. Speaking for myself, although I must say that as I see it, I'm certainly not a true practitioner, nor am I by any means a great and accomplished master, I can say that, at least in terms of Buddhist teachings, especially those of the Nyingma tradition, I count as someone who has, to some extent, carefully and thoughtfully studied various important scriptures and scholarly treatises. Sometimes I take a quiet moment to reflect on my own mind, thoughtfully considering my thoughts and feelings. Through many years of long-term experience and careful, thoughtful observation, over the course of my life, I have ultimately and truly come to the important realization that we truly have not gained a real practical understanding of the preliminary practices. At the same time, if we don't cultivate each teaching thoroughly over a long period, our practice cannot be complete in any way. and our practice cannot truly succeed. No matter how many teachers you have followed, or what kinds of Dharma texts you have read, or how many different schools you have studied, in the end, apart from planting a few seeds of virtue in your own mind stream, and nurturing them with patience and dedication, it is extremely, extremely difficult to truly cut off the root of samsara. So this time, many of us really do, truly, genuinely, absolutely have this very deep indeed karmic connection. Now that you have this valuable opportunity, don't let it slip by. You must focus your mind, even if you temporarily, even just for a short while, don't concentrate on other things. Just for now, just wholeheartedly focus your mind on the preciousness of human life and the impermanence of life. We have emphasized this without exception in every single one of the more than 20 sessions that have taken place over the past several weeks. Some of the practical methods from the 3 points of resting the mind in Dzogchen guidance text have also once again been repeatedly emphasized this time. You should continue to contemplate the preciousness of human life for another 2 or 3 months. Originally, our unique preliminary practices this time, such as the full prostrations, are all currently ongoing and in progress as part of our current schedule at this very moment. Now, doing full prostrations at the same time is definitely fine for most people. The most important thing is that we have specifically set aside some time for everyone. This year and next year, our institute requires the Dharma friends from Vajrayana Demon Subduing Continent and Bodhi Society to focus mainly on practice, while also continuing their study and contemplation without interruption. Principle we follow, therefore, we hope that everyone realizes how precious human life is and how quickly time passes. Over these 2 years, many Dharma friends should, within the continuum of their own minds, truly understand the rarity of human life, not just acknowledge it. Nor is it simply just a matter of understanding it on paper. Understanding it on paper is very easy. As for the teachings in the preliminary practices, not to mention the many intellectuals we have here, even some children now, in 3rd or 4th grade of elementary school, if you look at the content, you can basically or essentially understand it. I once saw in the Northeast region many elementary school students who study Buddhism all recite the great perfection practices. They can casually explain it, and they do it very well, as a matter of fact, even better than I do. They speak well verbally, but I believe their actual practice is definitely not as good as mine. Though my practice is poor, they are only able to talk about it on the surface. They might say human life is rare. They just know a little bit about it casually. But in reality, they may not have truly reflected on it in their hearts, point by point. Whether this or that condition is present, if something is lacking, they should consider what to do and try every possible way to make it complete. If it is complete, is this only temporarily complete, or will this aspect truly stay with me throughout my lifetime? So many people who have experience in spiritual practice will have different methods of contemplation when it comes to genuine practice. Therefore, at this particular moment, we are sincerely asking, as well as including many fellow Dharma friends and dedicated practitioners who are present with us right now, those who have generated the aspiration for the Sangha and for all sentient beings, to contemplate the principles of the precious human life every morning when they wake up. There is absolutely no difficulty in this truly. As long as you develop firm conviction in the genuine Dharma, you absolutely won't sleep in or get caught up in any other things at all. The main reason is that in our hearts, apart from being often attached to trivial matters of this life, we have not truly developed faith in future lives and the rarity of human existence. The reason we haven't built this faith is that we keep making all sorts of excuses for ourselves for various reasons not to study. Even if they do study, it's just superficial and perfunctory. This kind of behavior is, quite honestly, truly and deeply shameful and really not worth mentioning whatsoever in any respect. I know some lay practitioners who are always saying, I'm busy with this, I'm busy with that. Every day, they use all sorts of excuses about being busy. They keep putting off studying the Dharma time and again. If they put off studying the Dharma, then as for actual practice, there's even less to say. Nowadays, sometimes we really see that among so many people in the world, those who actually study Buddhism are very few. Even among those who do study Buddhism, for many, it's just a superficial kind of refuge and formality. Some people, although they have listened, very few people actually practice the real substantial content within it in their everyday lives. In practice, some people do practice, but their order of practice is all mixed up. Right from the very beginning, they genuinely try to reach for the highest teachings, striving to understand. In everyday conversations, people ask, have you received such an empowerment? Have you received the Guru's heart essence or Yamantaka empowerment? Then, with determination and focus, they make this their objective or aspiration in their hearts. It's like how people in the world ask, who is your idol? Their goal is to receive a great empowerment, attain enlightenment in this very life, and immediately fly off to a pure land. Today, they want to go to the pure land of ultimate bliss and enjoy all kinds of happiness there. Then tomorrow, off to the copper-colored mountain every day, flying here and there, extremely happy, truly content and carefree. That's exactly the kind of goal they have in mind. But you never actually consider truly starting your practice from the very beginning, focusing on the absolute basics. This may seem basic, but in reality, for us, it is actually an extremely important and truly fundamental Dharma. Some time ago, I gave a teaching to everyone about the neck-worn Vajra peg. Afterwards, I noticed that many of you had quite strong faith. That very day, all the available Vajra pegs in stock in our institute were completely sold out. The next day, all the Vajra pegs in Sada County were also sold out. It just so happened that it was during the holiday period. At Wuhao Shrine and in Beijing, many distribution centers, Vajra pegs, all have been requested. So in this regard, you are all quite attached. I saw that many monastics were like this. This object closely resembles the traditional Tibetan knives that are typically carried by men from the Kalm. Some people even tuck long Vajra pegs at their waists for various personal reasons or out of tradition. There are certainly cases and examples like this as well. Indeed, the merit of the Vajra peg is also inconceivable. But honestly, I must say, I find some of you quite pitiable. What is a Vajra peg, really? You know nothing about generation stage and completion stage. You just wear it like a knife, always thinking it looks so stylish and good on you every single day. Or you think, with this, perhaps, I can subdue demons. Anyone who creates obstacles for me, I can pierce their stomach with it. Maybe that's what some of you might be thinking to yourselves. I don't really know the specifics since I don't have clairvoyance. But what I genuinely regret is that I honestly haven't really heard of many of you yet. Bringing the preliminary practices of the great perfection when you go out this time. This is the most important Dharma text of my entire life. I'll take a look when I have time, but honestly, I'm actually afraid it's just not there. If I were to ask you to raise your hands, how many of you actually brought Dharma text with you when you went out this time? So, in your hearts, the level of importance you place on this is really not enough. The way you study Buddhism is completely different from the way we do. You are people of sharp faculties, starting from the result and working backwards, while we are of dull faculties. At first, we encountered the preliminary practices of Dzogchen, and then started from the basics, from the rarity of human life. Little by little, it rose in our hearts. And when it arises like this, now, after 20 years have passed, we can still stay at the Institute. It seems this is a blessing from the preliminary practices. Otherwise, back then, many of us who became monastics together, some people liked reaching for things beyond their grasp. But later on, as time went on, their approach and practice was not, in the end, very successful. So I hope that for all of you Dharma friends, this is also a very good opportunity. As for myself, although my own practice is not particularly outstanding, I am personally guiding you and have carefully arranged a considerable amount of time for everyone. During this extended period, I hope you lay a foundation in 4 preliminaries. Life's rarity, I really want to lay a solid foundation for my future endeavors. Human life is valuable. In a lifetime, how many times do you practice a single Dharma method? There are not many such opportunities. Perhaps in this lifetime, such an incredible and truly comprehensive Dzogchen practice for you all. This is the first time, and it may also be the last time. For me as well, guiding you is the same. But I hope that in the process of guiding you, in the mind streams of many people, there will arise realizing how precious human life is. Many of you may have this natural feeling in your hearts, not something forced or pretended. From the depths of your heart, to genuinely give rise to a feeling. Human life is hard to come by. When you look at the vast, boundless sea of humanity, you feel a deep sense of pity. You see, so many people don't study the Dharma even though human life is so precious. Why don't they study Buddhism? If everyone could have this thought in their hearts, and also make use of this human life themselves, not wasting it, not squandering it, but truly and sincerely practicing with true diligence and care, with focus and intention, this is actually one of my main goals. I know I myself am an ordinary person, a lowly being. I don't expect that all of us hundreds of people will attain enlightenment right now, of course. Hundreds of people have, quite remarkably, immediately attained the first level of bodhisattva. In this degenerate age, especially now, when the time for fruition has already passed, At this very moment, in these circumstances, such things are impossible. But if each person can truly establish a very strong and reliable foundation, a foundation that is truly solid and dependable, then your practice within this lifetime will not keep changing or be pushed around. It won't happen. Even making genuine aspirations for lifetime after lifetime is extremely precious and extraordinary. In the Han regions, some monks in the temples and some lay practitioners, when you talk with long-time Buddhist practitioners who have studied for years, you often simply don't hear any real concern for future lives. They only care about supernatural powers or miracles in this life or about the present moment. Some people, when the topic turns to political matters, a lot of terminology just naturally comes out, discussing Dharma, especially when talking about karma or the profound philosophies of Buddhism. They basically fall silent. This kind of situation does exist. So now, for us, it truly is the case that studying the Dharma ultimately means integrating it into our own hearts. I think this is the purpose that many lineage masters have passed down to us. Next, the content we discuss each day may not be a lot, but I sincerely hope that the principles discussed this time will truly help you, especially with the preliminary practices. Because I am elaborating spontaneously, some parts may not be very smooth, and some sequences may not be entirely coherent. However, Patrul Rinpoche's preliminary practices carries exceptionally profound blessings. Everyone should always carry it with them at all times, for safety and convenience, wherever they may go. The way of the bodhisattva provides an understanding of the Mahayana, the benefits of generating bodhicitta compared to great perfection practices. I feel that to truly counteract afflictive emotions and genuinely eliminate self-clinging, the Great Perfection offers practical pith instructions in these aspects. Especially in our preliminary practice, there are often practical pith instructions for actual practice. At the same time, the lineage masters invisibly bring us exceptionally profound blessings and strength. When favorable conditions come together within our mind streams, we cannot help but give rise to genuine signs of warmth or to compassion and wisdom. Next, let's examine the original text. If we do not carefully examine these 16 types of non-leisure, the 16 types of non-leisure mentioned earlier by Venerable Longchen Pa, then in today's world, which is so polluted and degenerate, some people may appear on the surface to possess all the freedoms and advantages and also display the outward appearance as well as the overall look of practitioners, because now, at this very moment, in this present, profoundly degenerate age, in such a world of the 5 impurities, the views and conduct of sentient beings are becoming increasingly inferior and degraded. You could say that at this time, on the surface, it seems that many people, they even believe they have already obtained the genuine precious human body and feel quite pleased about it. On the surface, they may also appear to be monastics or lay practitioners, or perhaps they took refuge long ago, so they are definitely practitioners. They themselves believe this, and so do others. However, this includes even the great Dharma kings on high thrones, the eminent masters beneath ornate parasols, the ascetics who have dwelled deep in the mountains, and the renunciants who wander the world. All of these people who feel quite good about themselves, if they have already fallen under the sway of these causes of lack of leisure, then, no matter how effectively they carry out their practice, in any way, they ultimately cannot enter the true path. This section is absolutely and extremely important, without a doubt, if we do not very carefully and really thoroughly examine ourselves. On the surface, we may think of ourselves as practitioners, and some people are not just ordinary practitioners, not just ordinary lay people, not just ordinary monastics, but even some eminent respected masters on high Dharma thrones, great and respected Dharma kings, great and honored living Buddhas, and great highly accomplished ones. They themselves also truly believe that their entire life is lived constantly amid the respect, admiration, and praise of the masses by the people, or, as we often say, surrounded by vibrant, beautiful flowers and resounding, enthusiastic applause all around us, always. In that case, they think, my practice must be truly excellent. They themselves believe this, and so do many others. They think such and such a master, such and such a great master must be an accomplished one. They are absolutely certain that he is truly most extraordinary. In their minds, they regard him as a true spiritual teacher. However, if we truly apply the principles mentioned above in our actual everyday lives, then what happens? If we do not observe very carefully and thoroughly then whether it is these so-called great masters under the parasols, there are many such masters, both in Han regions and in Tibetan regions, whether it is during ceremonial invitations or in daily life, there are always some exquisite parasols above them. And there are also those who have lived in remote mountains for long periods, some of whom have stayed in retreat for 9 years without ever coming out. And they see themselves as long-term ascetics, true practitioners. There are some who wander, those we often refer to as wandering practitioners, who have left behind their homes and families, and who have renounced all worldly affairs and material attachments, dedicating themselves to spiritual cultivation and personal growth. These renunciants, it seems these people are truly excellent practitioners. Some even appear to have no need for fame or material gain at all. They make pilgrimages from our region to Lhasa, prostrating along the way. All of this looks admirable, but if we do not observe carefully, it is very likely that these people's minds are actually bound by some of the 16 faults that Venerable Longchenpa mentioned earlier. Some are constrained by ignorance, some are bound by greed, anger, broken discipline, or perhaps violations of Samaya vows, and so on, among other things. Many impure causes, which may include both subtle internal conflicts and outside influences, could have worked together to bind and disrupt his sense of continuity. If that's the case, then, not to mention benefiting sentient beings, they haven't even truly, honestly, or genuinely entered into the genuine Dharma themselves yet, in any real sense. They haven't stepped through the door of the true Dharma. This is extremely frightening. I honestly sometimes think this way myself. For example, some lay practitioners in the Han region were very respectful at that time, but when they examine their own minds, they are very clear about what they are really like. These people are very pitchable, and I am also pitchable. I truly, honestly often think this way in my heart. There are actually a great many similar case far, more than we might initially realize or expect. The simple fact is that we just haven't discovered or identified them yet. Indeed, sometimes, for example, living in the monastic community but not keeping the precepts pure, or sitting on the Dharma throne but not managing many matters concerning the Sangha properly. In such situations, there is only one path in the next life, which is to fall into the lower realms. It falls into hell, the realm of hungry ghosts or the animal realm. There are many cases of such eminent monks and great masters falling into hell. In the past, in the records of Mount Wutai, there was a story about a drum made of human skin. Actually, this is quite honestly a completely true story. During the Tang dynasty, there was a renowned monk known as Master Fa'ai. He had already served as the monastery supervisor for 20 years. Later, he used the Sangha's property to secretly buy a piece of land for himself. Afterwards, he gave this land to one of his disciples under him, named Ming Hui, for his use. But later, Master Fai was reborn as an ox after his death. Ming Hui had it plough the land there for 30 years. Later, when he was carefully preparing to sell this ox, that very day, the ox came in a dream and said, "I am the former Master Fai. It would be best if you now use this land for the Sangha. Since I have become an ox, it would be best if my hide were made into a drum for the Sangha's use. Otherwise, even if this land were to eventually turn into a vast ocean, my karmic debt ultimately will still not be exhausted." The next day, that very same ox unfortunately happened to run into something and died. He was extremely frightened by the situation, feeling a strong sense of urgency. He quickly gathered all the monks together to discuss what had happened and made arrangements for the land to be respectfully offered to the Sangha. The ox hide was made into a drum, which was placed in a temple visited by pilgrims. At that time, it was said to be in the Manjushri Hall. This drum was placed in the Manjushri Haland, was called the human skin drum. Then, the old monk's name was very carefully and slowly written on it by hand. Sometimes we can reflect on this. Back then, he was also someone who was truly deserving of great respect from many people in his community and beyond. At that time, he himself, because he lacked concept of how rare human life is and the law of karma, he acted quite recklessly and did many things, all without any restraint at all. There are countless such real-life examples. In the past, in the biographies of eminent monks of the Song dynasty, there was the monk Shide. At first, he was found by Chan Master Fengen, which is why he was called Shide, meaning picked up. After he arrived at Guojing Temple, he was assigned the daily responsibility of herding cattle throughout the temple grounds, making once, while the Buddhist monks in the temple were peacefully gathered together performing the Uposatha ceremony, He carefully and patiently drove the cattle slowly over to them, making sure they all stayed together. At that time, a monk asked him to drive the cattle away. Please don't disturb us. Right now, the monks are quietly performing this very important, deeply solemn ritual. At that very moment, without any hesitation, he turned to me and responded in a calm and steady voice. Shahid said, "In that case, I won't herd the cattle anymore." Then the people in the temple said, "If you don't herd the cattle, without any further delay, are you really just going to do absolutely nothing at all day, except eat?" Shahid was indeed a great accomplished one, and also an incarnation of a bodhisattva. There are many such accounts in history. He said, yes, if you only eat the monk's food, without listening, contemplating and practicing, without doing anything. Ultimately, after all, it seems that your destiny in this life is to become an ox. Look at this temple. Many of the great monks and Vinaya masters from before, throughout its long and storied history, have all turned into large oxen before our very eyes. At that time, Vinaya master Hongjing, great monk Guangchao, and so on. In fact, many of these oxen were quite literally, actually them. At first, they didn't believe it, but later he suggested, if you call each monk's name, the corresponding ox will come out. Sure enough, just as expected, every single one of them eventually emerged from their hiding places. At that very moment, as everyone watched in anticipation, Monk Shahid turned to the group and said, "In your past life, you did not uphold the precept human face, but a beast's heart. Now you suffer this retribution, who can you blame?" With deliberate care, he recited this verse very slowly, and with great care and attention. Afterwards, they truly developed some firm understanding about karma and many other aspects. So some people might wonder, does that mean monks and monastics fall into lower realms? Ordinary worldly people will not fall into lower realms. Absolutely not. Ordinary worldly people are actually in even greater danger. Some lay practitioners and monastics, perhaps in their daily lives, don't even have the chance to practice. Some lack this entirely. The negative karma they create is even more frightening. Therefore, if we truly have a sense of how rare and precious human life is, if this awareness doesn't arise enough, it will affect significant issues later on, even for lifetimes to come. Therefore, we should first observe very carefully, little by little, step by step, making sure to proceed gradually. This is very important. Sometimes I find myself quietly and thoughtfully reflecting, especially when it comes to the 18 freedoms and advantages that were mentioned earlier in our conversation. We should treat them just like elementary school students, carefully working on their homework. Check if this or that one is present. Go through them one by one and observe. What we call practice is like this. Some people may feel as if they don't experience anything during their practice. This simply means you are not focused. If you truly have faith in the Dharma, without any doubt, every teaching that Patrul Rinpoche gives us, you should check whether you possess it or not. This is what is meant by practice. Nowadays, some people think that so-called practice must involve closing your eyes or visualizing a deity, something with a face and form in front of you. This is what true practice is. I especially notice that some Dharma friends have particularly poor ability in practicing the 4 preliminary practices. A while back, they all practiced, but some people seem to have no response, no particular feeling. If you don't have any feeling, it means your practice has essentially become just a superficial formality. If it's just a superficial formality, then in your future study and practice, in situations like this, you will most certainly and quite understandably be very easily swayed and at times eventually lose your confidence. So I think our daily practice must truly touch our hearts. This is extremely important. Therefore, we absolutely must not rush or be careless and, all too often, prematurely jump into the various external forms of practice. First, we must carefully observe our own mental continuum to see whether we truly possess the essence of these 34 types of leisures and endowments. So when we first start learning Buddhism, actually, there is no need to rush. Don't be in a hurry, insisting on maintaining a certain appearance. Some of our Dharma friends were very anxious when they wanted to ordain. They'd urge every day. If we say observe for 4 months and ask them to wait, after just 2 or 3 days, they ask, can I ordain now? I really can't hold back anymore. I very, very much want to become a monk. Could you please shave my head just a little bit earlier? They would say this every single day. In the end, with 2 or 3 months left, there was really no other way, so we shaved their heads. After shaving their heads, they were especially happy. Ah, this feels so good. Thank you. Now that I've lost all of my hair and my head is completely bald, I can't help but wonder how I look. It's definitely a big change for me, and they believe, or perhaps imagine, that being bald is truly the image of a monastic. But the most crucial thing is that you truly, genuinely, and deeply develop this firm, unwavering understanding in your heart. This is very important. Nowadays, in some places, people think that simply getting a refuge certificate or a document, taking a Dharma name, or performing a ceremony, these are rituals and they are indeed necessary. But the most fundamental thing is, whether you are starting out as a monastic or a layperson, the external appearance doesn't really matter. It's fine to have it, it's fine not to have it, either way is okay. But the most crucial thing is to carefully and thoroughly contemplate the 18 freedoms and advantages mentioned above. And also Venerable Longchenpa's teachings about avoiding the 16 types of non-leisure. See whether you possess these or not, and examine yourself repeatedly. Therefore, I truly, genuinely, and sincerely hope that a great many people in big cities, through this guidance, will truly come to realize that some of their previous practice was merely superficial in nature. Inwardly, the Dharma had not truly merged with their hearts. The feeling of the Dharma merging with your heart is completely different from outward behavior. We can see this clearly from many great masters and accomplished teachers. Once the concept of human life's value arises in their hearts, they no longer busy themselves with trivialities. This is evident from their actions. Their speech and demeanor, as well as their overall manner, also fully and clearly reveal this. The things they say and the things they do, you can see it in their usual deportment and conduct, that they place great importance on the next life and on genuine spiritual practice. Other worldly interests, such as watching TV, movies, or various cartoons, such an interest would never occur to him. These are entirely deceptive. Watching worldly programs and all sorts of various distracting visual images and scenes such as these, this is not very meaningful and valuable. Therefore, we should be able to become aware of or perceive this ourselves on our own without external assistance. We need to carefully observe whether or not we possess these qualities. If we truly do possess what was described above, but in this degenerate age, it is indeed very difficult. Perhaps they occasionally possess these qualities, but sustaining them long term is different. Looking at some of the principles mentioned above, it is still quite challenging for us. If we truly do possess them, that is something to be genuinely happy about. Moreover, we should sincerely reflect on this repeatedly. Now that I have obtained this precious human life with opportunity, I must not simply waste it in vain. Instead, I must diligently practice the true Dharma. If we look at the 34 qualities mentioned above, and a person possesses all of them, it shows that this person is truly remarkable. But fellow practitioners here, ask yourselves, honest, have you ever examined yourselves in this way? If you have never reflected on this before, then starting today, you really need to do so. You should compare these 34 qualities with your own mind stream, one by one, for yourself. This isn't something to say casually, nor am I telling you this without ever having examined myself. That's not the case. I have reflected on this in the past as well. At the end of Venerable Longchenpa's 30 pieces of heartfelt advice, it is said, when you see things in others, you should also reflect slightly in your own mind and compare yourself accordingly. That's how it's taught. I too cannot claim to have done this extensively, but I have indeed reflected a little. Ever since encountering this Dharma teaching, I have often examined myself up to now. So, some people here actually never practiced at all. What you have been practicing is actually another Dharma method, so your direction is already mistaken. It's very difficult in most cases for true miracles to actually occur in your practice. See if you have these qualities. If you have them, you should be happy. Afterwards, sincerely aspire further, thinking, with such an exceptionally rare and precious human life, I truly must not allow myself to waste it in vain. Because this human life truly is, whether from the perspective of its causes, its analogies, or its results and nature, extremely rare and precious. Its cause requires carefully and strictly upholding pure precepts in order to obtain it. Its conditions require generosity and other virtues as well as making aspirations. Therefore, Master Vasubandhu also said, to attain favorable rebirth, precepts are essential. To be free from afflictions, practice is essential. We have a human body. If we want to be free from afflictions, first thing we need is pure precepts.
Without pure precepts, it is absolutely impossible to obtain a favorable human rebirth. Greed, anger, and ignorance within us are timeless. If we want to eliminate all kinds of deep-rooted afflictions, we must engage in practice. Without practice, it is impossible to dispel afflictions. Some people say, my afflictions are too strong. They read books, recite Diamond Sutra. They still have afflictions, feel anger, and experience greed. Why is this? It is because we have not truly practiced. If we genuinely practice, the afflictions in our mental continuum will definitely be eliminated. This is simply an inevitable law because these are opposing principles. When a fire is blazing fiercely, even the slightest cold will be driven away. In the same way, such a rare and truly remarkable opportunity as ours, without a doubt, can only be attained through pure discipline and faith, among other qualities. As stated in the Jewel Garland treatises, through faith one is freed from lack of leisure. Relying on discipline, one is born into fortunate realms. Only after we have truly developed faith can we finally be free from the persistent lack of leisure. Obstacles, such as not having enough time or sufficient leisure to practice, can, in most cases, be successfully overcome with persistence. Then, with discipline, one can be reborn in a fortunate realm in the future. If you lack both personal faith and discipline, it is very likely that in the next life you will be reborn into one of the three lower realms. Therefore, fellow practitioners here, it truly isn't just something we say, but from the depths of our hearts, we must have a very strong aspiration for the genuine Dharma. This is important, as Patrul Rinpoche also said, the genuine Dharma is right by our side. There is no need to seek it elsewhere. Some practitioners find that their own practice never succeeds, so they go to this teacher, then to that teacher. Today they visit this monastery. Tomorrow they go to that monastery. Sometimes, when I hear stories about such people, I quietly and very gently smile to myself, almost absent-mindedly. Why do I smile? Oh, no matter which teacher this person goes to, he definitely won't be able to achieve realization, because I know he hasn't laid a solid foundation nor turned inward to practice self-reflection, but instead has always been seeking teachings externally, especially for guidance. If you keep looking outside, you will never obtain it. In fact, everyone should possess the Dharma. It just depends on whether you are willing to put in the effort. Attaining realization depends on oneself. Indeed, if you put in real effort, given how rare a human life is, then after a few decades your practice will definitely become stable. If you practice consistently and long-term, you will succeed in your cultivation. But the problem is, some people are always careless and half-hearted in their practice. They practice a little, then stop in the middle. It's just the same with anything we do in the world. If you lack patience and perseverance, you simply won't be able to successfully accomplish anything in your endeavors. So, during listening, contemplation, and practice, if you break the lineage or are unwilling to practice, this is what is called a demonic obstacle. In the past, Guru Padmasambhava told Dakini Yeshe Tsogyal one of the most supreme teachings. He said that anything which creates any kind of obstacles or hindrances to your spiritual practice or cultivation is, in fact, considered to be a demonic obstacle. Whether it creates obstacles in your own mind or whether it creates obstacles, as long as there are obstacles to your practice, these are simply demonic obstacles. Today I receive a transmission and someone says, if I leave, such and such will happen. And as a result, you can't complete your practice. This is what is called a demonic obstacle. Some people think demonic obstacles mean bad dreams, or that some terrifying demon appears like, wow, it just shows up. But this is what a real demon is. If not, look, this Dharma friend really cares about me so much, calling me, and their voice is so warm and kind, they absolutely cannot be a demonic obstacle. That Lama's voice is so gentle, so very compassionate, and incredibly, truly, deeply endearing. After hearing it, I don't even need to sleep for 3 or 4 days. My heart feels so comfortable and so happy. Sometimes, even when I slowly close my eyes, the Lama's warm, gentle smile appears before me. Inside, I feel so warm, as if a gentle, comforting heat is spreading throughout my entire body, filling me with a sense of peace. But in reality, for this kind of person, your practice has actually, indeed, already encountered an obstacle. In other words, if obstacles do, for example, arise in the practice you originally engaged in, regardless of what form they take, according to the teachings of Guru Padmasambhava, these are called demonic obstacles. So, fellow friends, you should always be cautious. If you have not yet attain these qualities, if you do not have the 34 qualities mentioned above, then you should do everything you possibly can and devote yourself fully and completely to cultivating them. Wholeheartedly, we should review earlier points. And if we find that some qualities are lacking, we must find ways to cultivate them. Always and everywhere, we must focus on examining our own mind stream to see whether we genuinely and fully possess the merits of these freedoms and advantages in our lives. This can't be accomplished by watching a day or two. Throughout our lives, at any time and place, we must examine ourselves. Many seasoned practitioners serve as our role models. Their practice is not dependent on always having enough time available or on being in a specific fixed environment at all. When they are deep in mountains, the daily recitations and practices they do are unceasing. Even if they go to the city, their practice always never stops. If they go to the hospital or to any other environment and time have no influence on him. But some Dharma friends do quite well when they are in a quiet mountain retreat, like an arhat made of glass, very steady and composed, unmoved by the world around him, his calmness and clarity shining through, as if nothing could disturb his peaceful state. Very good, remaining unmoved like that. But once you get to the city, you go many days without doing your daily practice. Many people really went out this time. Think about it yourself. We had all recite Samantabhadra's aspiration daily. What we recite each day is our daily practice. Principles about arousing bodhicitta. But some of you, I've heard that, as I understand it, for 2 or 3 days, or days you didn't recite any sutras. That clearly shows that your environment, even now, still has a very big influence on you, as you can see. In fact, in this case, your practice is honestly not very diligent. I really admire those practitioners who are not affected by their environment or by time. It's just like how we eat every day as human beings. No matter where you are, no matter what kind of specific environment you're in, at any given moment, you continue to persistently dedicate yourself to your own personal practice, maintaining your commitment and focus as you steadily work toward your goals. This, in essence, is what it truly means to have extraordinary perseverance and steadfast, unwavering patience. If you haven't actually gone through such careful and thorough observation, then even if just one of these key freedoms and important advantages is even slightly absent or missing, you still don't have the true conditions to practice the sublime Dharma. Among the 16 points we discussed earlier, if you don't check them, you might miss. But once you look closely, if even one of the causes and conditions is lacking, then it is absolutely impossible for us to fully possess the great Dharma for practice. For example, when driving a car, even if all the other conditions are met, but if the front wheel isn't working properly, then unfortunately, there's really nothing you can basically do. The driver's skills are also very good. All other conditions are met. Or if the car loses fuel, or if there's absolutely no engine oil at all, can it work? No, it can't, not even a little bit. I don't know how to drive. So, do all cars genuinely require engine oil? No. Is that really right, as far as I know? Those who have ever driven a vehicle truly really know. Have you ever actually driven a car before, even just once? Are you interested in getting behind the wheel and driving a vehicle? If so, can you explain your reasons or motivations for wanting to drive? Please share what makes driving appealing or important to you. All right, as I was saying just now, let me repeat that for you. As I mentioned a moment ago, even to accomplish an ordinary, everyday task in the mundane world, it also requires various causes and conditions and factors. So when it comes to the long-term goal of practicing the true Dharma, how could it not require the presence and convergence of numerous causes and conditions as well? As we know, even in the mundane world, as I mentioned earlier, even the seemingly smallest matter, no matter how minor, if its causes and conditions are not complete, then you must let it go. There's nothing you can do about it. If even the most trivial matters in the world are like this, how much more for major tasks like benefiting oneself and others, or attaining Buddhahood? How could such great matters not require the full presence of all necessary causes and conditions? So some monastics and practitioners, if their practice fails, required causes aren't complete. Among these causes, the most important is the rarity of a human body. Earlier, we discussed 34 methods. These 34 methods are extremely crucial. Everyone should thoroughly observe these in daily life. If even 1 or 2 of them are lacking, it's possible that the causes and conditions for your practice will be cut off. There's no need to go everywhere seeking divinations or fortune-telling, asking why your practice isn't working. I can't keep practicing and I see no signs of accomplishment. I still haven't seen my Yidamwai, is that? There's no need to go around asking here and there, questioning everyone. The problem lies in the key point, the rarity of obtaining a human body. If there's no problem in this area, then your practice will definitely go smoothly. For some of us, it's still necessary to understand the real key points of how to get things done. Understanding this is very important. Here, it's explained using a very simple, just worldly analogy. For example, let's say someone is boiling tea on the road. You need to have the right tea utensils, suitable water, proper fire, and many other important conditions, all of which are necessary in order to make tea. This mainly refers to a certain lifestyle habit, meaning a particular way of living or a routine behavior that was common in ancient Tibet. Such habits were part of the daily when people were traveling on the road. Nowadays, people in the world, maybe in Han regions, don't have the concept of boiling tea on the road. What's meant here by boiling tea is, for example, if I were traveling from Seda to Ganzi. In the past, it was impossible to take a car or plant, those just weren't options. People usually went on foot or rode horses. On such a long journey, you definitely need to rest and probably have lunch at some point along the way. So when it was time for lunch, you'd stop and boil tea. So why did people need to boil tea on the road? Although it's called boiling tea, it really just means stopping to eat. Just like the long-distance bus that travels from Seda to Merkang, or even all the way to Chengdu, for example. During the journey, you'd stop to eat. Back then, people usually carried fire-making tools and tinder with them. To boil tea, then, you needed these kinds of conditions. Even just making a fire required the same thing. You had to have all the necessary conditions like a fire striker, flint, tinder, and so on. If, for example, you were just missing the tinder, then even if you had all the other supplies, it would still be, in fact, completely useless. You'd really have no choice but to completely give up on boiling tea altogether. Would simply be no possible way to do it, not under those circumstances. Just now, when we were carefully boiling tea on the road, we had fresh water available, as well as all of the necessary food and ingredients that we needed for our meal. Everything was perfectly prepared. But when the moment arrived to make a fire, in the traditional way, according to how people lived in ancient times, you absolutely had to have tinder, flint, and fire iron. All three were essential. I've mentioned before that, as I've said in the past, when we were young in many different places throughout Tibet, people often used that kind of thing, back in those days. Flinter, small white stone, and tinder, which is still quite common and frequently seen in Larung today, is actually a kind of delicate, soft white grass flower, often found growing in the fields. In autumn, dried in the sun. After drying, it was slowly rubbed until it became soft. Then, in ancient times, people would usually keep it in their pockets for safekeeping. When needed, they would take out the fire iron, put a little tinder on the small white stone. Then, with a steady and careful motion, take the fire iron in your hand and firmly strike it against the intended object or surface, making sure, when the flint and the fire iron are struck together, small bright sparks are produced as a result, creating a brief flash. The sparks fall onto the tinder and smoke immediately starts to rise. See the smoke. You add it to some grass or other paper, and the fire will start almost right away. According to the way people lived in the time of Huazi Rinpoche, they would often stop along the road to make some tea or to cook their meals, sometimes taking a short break just to relax. If you ever run out of tinder, if you have fire iron and flint, but the tinder is used up, missing, or it's raining after it rains, the tinder is often quite damp. And at that particular time, well, you see, no matter how small sparks fall onto it, it still won't catch fire. So the whole process, just because of this one small thing, the lack of tinder, has to be abandoned completely. There's nothing you can do. It just won't work. In the same way, on the surface, the 34 factors mentioned above may not seem all that important. But among them, for example, breaking precepts or breaking vows, or having strong afflictions, if your afflictions are intense, you see, in a group where everyone is practicing well, but then someone's afflictions become severe, they conflict their Vajra, brothers and sisters. They lose their temper and just leave. From then on, because of this one circumstance, throughout their entire life, whether it's the rarity of a human rebirth or the subsequent stages of practice, all of it has to be set aside. So people without wisdom generally don't really examine this at all, but once you do carefully observe and pay close attention to it, you can see it clearly, both from your own experience and from others. Indeed, if even one of these conditions is lacking among all these causes and conditions, your practice will not succeed. You must be absolutely clear about this point. In the same way, if even one of these precious human qualities is lacking, then you simply do not have the true conditions necessary for practice. If you lack the genuine opportunity to practice, it is truly a great pity. Right now, while we are free and at ease, with all conditions present, if we do not practice at this time, when will we ever have the opportunity in the future? What I like most, and what our former precious guru also particularly cherished, a verse from Master Chandrakirti's Entering the Middle Way. If, when you are free and in favorable circumstances, you still cannot govern yourself, then when you fall into perilous situations and are swept along by others, how will you ever escape from there? If right now, when we are free and all favorable conditions are present, at such an opportune time, we cannot use right mindfulness and awareness to guard our sense doors, to subdue our afflictions and diligently practice, if I don't use this precious human life to practice well, in the future, if I fall into the realm of animals or into hell or the realm of hungry ghosts, then how could I possibly get myself out of there? There would be absolutely no real certainty at all. Sometimes, truly using this scriptural reasoning to repeatedly reflect on our own mental continuum, it is indeed the case that many Dharma friends who are currently present here, gathered together, still have advantageous and favorable conditions. Some people may say, I'm too busy, I have too many things going on. But in fact, as long as we cherish this opportunity, there really shouldn't be any problem at all. If we don't cherish it, this human life passes by extremely quickly. Buddhist scriptures state that human life is hard to obtain but easy to lose, and time slips away easily and is hard to recover. Buddhist scriptures say this. Human life is extremely precious, but in fact it can also disappear very easily. In the blink of an eye, the time for old age arrives, and time too is easily lost and very difficult to reclaim. When you truly make mistakes in this human life, or commit negative karma in your life, then it is extremely difficult and truly challenging to recover from it. The Brahmanet Sutra in its wisdom also says, once you lose your human body, you will not recover it for 10,000 eons. After losing this human life, even in millions of eons, when will you truly be able to regain it? So sometimes, in truth, we must truly rely on the teachings of spiritual teachers and the supreme instructions of the sages. We should all strive to develop and maintain a mindset of self-rescue, which means being ready and willing to help ourselves when we face difficulties. This point is extremely important. Everyone should reflect on whether they need to practice contemplating how rare human life is. If you don't practice it, just listening on the surface is still not enough. Simply listening and actually practicing are, in reality, very different. Understanding and actually experiencing things through practice are also truly very different. So distinguish these differences, and then you need to actually practice yourself. We'll stop here.
Bandara Padma Sada Bandara Padma Sada